Hello! So this month's theme is on fetishes, and it has come back with a lot of specific questions and more interesting questions. So I'm just gonna maybe do a little bit of both. Hi Marco, nice to see you here. Lovely to see you. I hope that you and your little cage are well. So I have been asking questions, or you have been asking me questions over the last 24 hours about the theme, which is fetishes. And so let us start. I'm going to try to start with something maybe a little broader or a little bit more useful rather than the ones that are about specific ones. Okay, all right. So, what are the most common and uncommon fetishes in your life or job? So I would say that when I first started at the dungeon, that the most common things that I came across and that people asked of me were definitely foot worship. Feet are a huge feature for people, it seems. Anal play, especially amongst a male population. You know, the prostate is unavoidable. The beauty of a prostate. As well as, I would probably also say, I wonder if I can say that on Instagram. But water sports, there we go. I think the alternative might be a little bit more confronting for the Instagram algorithm. But yeah, so I would say that those are definitely the top kind of ones. Whether you want to start using a strap-on for the anal kind of components is up to you, but actually for the reality of it, you don't really need equipment for any of those. So those are the most common asks. Whether people necessarily fetishize them is another thing. So we can also go into that later. When it comes to uncommon things, uncommon is also, that's an interesting question in and of itself, because I guess uncommon might mean that people don't want to share about it. Uncommon might mean that actually it doesn't happen very much, but I have the feeling that there's kind of a balance that's happening when it comes to those. The things that I have come across less over time, over the last 10 years or so, I would say, I don't know, everything kind of comes up every now and then, but I can definitely say that the feet, the butt, and the showering of the golden is definitely very, very common. So maybe we can get back to what uncommon might mean a little bit later. So let's try to find, there was this, here we go. So just talking about what we were saying, what I was mentioning about fetish versus kink. And that's quite interesting, unless somebody really divulges to you, or you can see there's a very clear reaction. So the differentiation within this world, is that when somebody determines something as a kink, it could be something that is like of interest in, that gives a little bit of a thrill, like a sexual thrill. Yeah. Whereas when it comes to when we start to use the word fetish and fetishizing, it's when we really need that particular aspect, material, action thing to be satiated, to be satisfied. So yeah, that's kind of the differentiation. And so when I spoke about when people used to come to the dungeon and ask for those specific things, it could actually be a range, right? It could just be a general preference, a curiosity, not necessarily what is defined as a fetish, which is something that needs to be a part of the experience for you to feel satiated. So glad we got that smart one out of the way. I wonder, so a lot of you have been asking questions about specific plays, which I guess are your fetishes. Okay, let's talk about me. Let's talk about me a little bit. Oh, I think that was from a private person. So anyway, a lot of people have asked me that question. So if you want to ask any questions, feel free to ask using the little question thing down the bottom. So let's see. Lots of people have been asking about boots, which is cute. All right. So we tell you about ours. Thank you very much for telling about yours all the time. I love making your desires a part of my awareness. But we tell you about ours. This time, you tell us about your fetishes and what turns you on. Okay, so I would say that my main thing is probably the power dynamic. So I really get a grand thrill out of that push and that pull of the dominance and the submission in and of itself. And if that is not there in some way, in some sort of way, even if in a very playful, small way, I don't feel very taken by an exchange and an experience. And so then when it comes to like other things are actually less important to me personally. I definitely have preferences for corporal punishment in particular, and for very structured, heavy bondage, whether that's in leather or whether that's in, engagement. Those are probably things that really make me very thrilled. However, I don't have to have those things. I think if I can do that psychologically, I'm very satisfied enough. And as long as I have that kind of awareness of a power dynamic, my fetish for those things are satiated. I also have a thing where I love to see a sense of discomfort. Do I always have to see that? I'd like to have that in an experience. It definitely adds something. Do I fetishize somebody's disgust? Yeah, maybe a little bit. So yeah. So there's some cute questions from all of this. Shall I indulge on a specific one? Okay. Lots of common and uncommon. All right. So the question is, why do you believe latex is such a prevalent fetish? Do I believe that it's prevalent? I guess there's something about it that you even see in like pop culture, right? So there's obviously something very appealing about it, even to a general public. As a fetish, there's definitely a lot of latex fetishists, which are some of my favorite. Why do I think that it's so popular, even just in general pop culture? I think because it's such a visually striking thing, and just as people who operate a lot in a visual medium, it probably can speak to that quite a lot. I think also the suggestion that it brings, as in the way that it can form and hold a body, without it's kind of that tease of it. I think that there's a lot of eroticization around tease, about things that are just a little bit like forbidden. People tend to enjoy indulging in that little space. So I think maybe latex can also appeal to that. And maybe there's something about us that just likes shiny things. Right? Like little animals collecting shiny things for our nests. Maybe there's something about that as well. And I know that the person who asked this has a very nice latex wardrobe of their own that I miss indulging in, but I'll see you in that wardrobe soon, hopefully. And on a note, I am in New York at the moment, and I thought that I would only be here for 2 weeks, and I have a wardrobe that has a lot of latex with me, but I'm missing mine so much. But anyway, that was a side note. I'm missing mine so much, and it's partly in Bali and partly in Singapore, and I don't know, I feel like I need to maybe get them shipped. So do I have a latex fetish? I don't need it as an essential part of my sexuality, but as a part of my life, I think I would probably feel fairly empty without having access to it. So yeah. So let's see. Let's do a specific fetish. A lot of you have. All right. So a lot of you have very specific questions about very specific fetishes, as opposed to asking me about the approach or the meaning in general. So I'm going to address some of them, even though I wouldn't say that that was what I came to this with. And so one of them is forced by one of these little questions. Do you love it? It's not about whether I like it right now. I think I don't really feel like talking about whether I like things so much maybe right now. Let's talk about the things in and of themselves. Do I love forced by? Okay. So people who have oh, or the times that I've gotten to experience people who enjoy the sense of a forced experience is always very interesting. There's this like beautiful emotional charge of I kind of desire it, but I kind of am not wanting to go into that space. Um, there's this conflict, and can you enable it? Can you be the conduit for this thing that I'm kind of shying away from? And there's a lot of like vulnerability and trust, and it's a very beautiful space in and of itself. When somebody really needs that, yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't want to go into like any particularly large forms of pathologizing here. So I'm going to stay away from where it may come from or what makeup it might be for somebody who gravitates towards that space. But when it comes to, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit hard for me to answer the very particular fetishes, kinks that people are asking about, because it can be so personal, and it can like translate to such a different experience for all of us, whether we're participating in somebody else's kink or whether it's something that we're coming from. So maybe I'm going to avoid actually, but I do like this one that's on the screen right now, which is force five. But it's not a particular fetish, but it's definitely a kink that I totally enjoy. But I might just scroll through a little bit and tell you what other people are mentioning in terms of the things that they like and want to hear about. They want to hear about needle play. They want to hear about caning. There's a lot of feet. There's a lot of feet things. Some smoking, some pegging, some scratching, some race play, which is an interesting one. All right, okay, let's go to this question. Are there fetishes you feel uncomfortable with or disinclined to try that you loved? That I realized that I loved. Will I share about it? Okay, so when I first started in this world of kink, BDSM, in general, my approach to life and to people and to experience, I'm very open, and I have been prior to my life in this world. I tried a lot of different career paths, even if it's just for a little bit. I was open to different people, maybe more so than I should have been sometimes. And so I learned to be discerning over time, but in general, I come from a very open place. And so when I first started entering this world of BDSM, I came with that mindset, which meant that I was able to, kind of hear what people were saying, see the equipment, see what people are requesting, and kind of just step into it and do it with very little judgment and more curiosity and interest. And that means that I got exposed to a lot, and I was interested in finding out aspects of things, and I got to experience a lot. So that said, I came up against some experiences to do with age play that I was a little bit unable to step into fully. So my first few experiences were to do with age play, where I was the older party and they were the younger, and I didn't know how to navigate that, because I think that it is something that we don't necessarily talk about in society in obviously a positive light, but also in like a constructively critical, explanatory kind of way. And so I never really had that vocabulary and that conversation with myself. And so I internalized a bit of a difficulty around going into that space. So I did try, but when they started asking me things about my childhood and about the ways that it triggered a lot of things that I didn't know how to have a conversation with myself about. That said, over time, I learned how to have that conversation. I learned how to understand that, that I don't have to take on things that are said in that space, that it doesn't necessarily need to be something that triggers me, that it can be, that I can see it from somebody else's perspective, and especially as a service provider, to understand where my boundaries lie around that and how I'm going to enforce them. I mean, that's a great tool for everybody, but because of the regularity of the things that come my way, I need to be able to do that on a quite high level. And so I would say that age play used to be quite a triggering thing for me, that I was quite uncomfortable with, because I didn't have a way of integrating that into my psyche. However, now I toy with it a bit more. I would say I'm still not very experienced with it because of those limitations of mine, but that is probably the one thing that has definitely been something that's been more challenging for me. Yeah. And it's going to be different for everybody, you know? Yeah. So thank you for that question. That was a good one. This is a nice one. All right. Have you always had them? Have you always had fetishes? Have I always had them? Have the people that I know who have them always had them? I think no. There's like a wide range. There's some aspects, like for example, me enjoying to see the discomfort of others. I think I've had that for a very long time. I can even remember early experiences when I was around 4 where I really enjoyed seeing that space, whether it was with my siblings or whoever. Just seeing awkwardness in a sense. Yeah, but in a very particular sense where like they've broken down in just a moment. Yeah. However, there are things that I've seen people acquire over time when they're first exposed to a certain activity, when they're first exposed to a certain material, and then, you know, and then it's something they start to own. So I would say that you can acquire these tastes and integrate them at different levels over a wide range of time. However, maybe, yeah, and also people go through phases, you know, like even though it feels so real and like you have to integrate it, I've seen some people drop away, you know, from enjoying a specific activity and like completely not wanting anything to do with it, and then eventually coming back to it and integrating it again. So I think that the way that we interact, our minds interact with our sexuality, and in time and space, the things that are happening, I think these things have a lot to, you know, shift for us. And so it's not necessarily maybe as concrete as sometimes I was maybe led to believe. So let's see. Thank you for asking questions. I think we've got quite a few new ones. Let's see. There's a lot of questions about foot fetishes, so maybe I will go into that because that is one of the most common things that I do come across. Oh, there's some people asking the same question over and over again. Maybe I shall block them. Is that can I turn that into a very useful fetish? A block button fetish? All right. Okay. All right. So the question is, can anything be a fetish? And does a fetish have to be sexual? So, does a fetish have to be sexual? By the definition of the term, then there is kind of that aspect to it. Definitely. However, I did a differentiation at the beginning where it was like kink, and also like for example, I have like a T-kink thing, tkink.com, which is a whole other thing that I do. But yeah, and so it's, by the definition of the term, sure, yes, fetish does have something to do with sexuality. Can anything be a fetish? Yeah. I've seen a wide range of things be really something of interest to people. Whether that's, you know, something that's as commonly loved as feet, to something more particular like cylindrical objects. And not the necessarily phallic type. Or then maybe it is. I don't know. But yeah. So it can be all sorts of things. Yeah. Let's see. Maybe we'll just do a couple more and we'll round it off to like a half an hour. Sometimes I go into an hour here, but I feel like, okay, this is a nice question. How to reconcile the desire? How do I reconcile the desire to engage in fetish with the fear of doing it? Okay. So let's talk about fear and desire just in a general context. Say we want to pursue something, but we're fearful of failing in order to do that. I think that's a very large question that I'm not sure if I can necessarily answer, but maybe that could be a way for you to also think about it. Like, is it the thing in and of itself, or is it the fact that it might not be what you thought? Or, you know, are you willing to risk it? Maybe you shouldn't think about it too much and you could just jump into it in a safe way. And yeah, so yeah, but if it's something like that there's this act and you're particularly fearful of following into that act. I guess if I don't exactly know which one it is, it could be maybe safety issues that you have issues with. It could be the fact that maybe you don't necessarily want to feel like that is a part of who you are, which is also another thing. So I think there's a lot of reasons why people shy away from really following through on the things that really get them off. And it would really depend on what that is before I can think about how to circumvent it, how to integrate it. But yeah. So if you want to ask me any questions today, it's about fetishes, and you're going to have to use the little question thing down the bottom, yeah? So yeah, I would say that maybe despite all of these particular ways that might be stopping you, do it in an incremental way. Do it with somebody that you trust. Or maybe even if you can indulge in it on your own or online. There could be little incremental ways to start to see whether it's really for you, whether you really want to integrate it, whether it's really something that you need to shy away from, and have a conversation about it also with somebody that you trust, or yeah, another party is always helpful, a community is always helpful to give it some context, and also to to help you process in terms of where you are in it, whether you really want it, etc. Yeah. So good luck with the movement towards being satiated and satisfied. So maybe 2 more. How about that? All-time favorites. I already mentioned power dynamics. All right. What is my deepest? I would say that probably is also about the power dynamics. All right, let's go right down to the bottom. Ooh, there's some more coming in about specific ones, such as chastity, ear pulling, which is a cute one. People asking about my leather, which is very sweet. Okay, let's see. This is an interesting question. So, do you know the causes of the start of a fetish and why it can escalate so strongly? No. No, I don't. I'm sure if you speak to people who are psychologists who interact with kinks and fetishes, they might have better theories for you. I can tell you that over my decade-long career and my personal interactions, that often it's like a particular moment and experience that sort of set the foundation for something, and it's grown over a lifetime. Has it sometime, yeah, and sometimes it's a shorter kind of run, so when they're much older as well. So I would say that it would probably, or sometimes people just see something online. So I think if we're just going to strip it back, it's just the exposure to the potential of something, and how that correlates with your sense of satisfaction. And that can happen in so many different configurations. Why can it escalate so strongly? Sometimes it's a slow burn. Sometimes it is like a crazy rush. I think for me in particular, I experience heights in when I need to indulge on my specific kinks and my specific fetishes when it comes to the things that are happening around me. I think that I've recognized these specific things that I like over time. However, when I'm very, very stressed, I like a really good corporal punishment session to be within my grasp, or when I'm feeling very frustrated intellectually, I feel like I need to start to play with those power dynamics a little bit more, so I can get some sort of an intellectual charge also. So it's I think that the context has a lot to do with how I'm feeling and how strongly I move towards something, me on a personal level. Other people could be different, so, but that's just my little insight right there. So I might have so there's been so many questions about boots. I think it's because I've been wearing boots lately a lot on my Instagram. So I'm gonna indulge on the boot thing. Okay? Let me find one of your many. Let me find a good one amongst all of these boot questions. Or did I get rid of them? Anyway, somebody just asked in the chat itself even though I'm trying to ignore the chat. So let me find. So I've been wearing these leather boots that I found. Ooh, who makes them? Oh, terrible. How terrible am I? But I bought them at DV8, which is also known as Purple Passion in New York, just maybe, here we go, a couple weeks ago, and I wore them to my Tea Kink event in New York here, as well as, you know, a few other things. They've been out and about, and I wore them in a video that introduced this as well. So, hence, you know, take out the boots for everyone to see, says a little comment. You can look all everywhere. They're all over. Look at my New York stores. I've worn them a few times. So, why is boot fetishism obsessed on by so many, says this question. What mighty power do boots have? So whoever asked this feels that boots have a mighty power. So, I would say that there could be connotations in a military direction, in like an authoritative hierarchy kind of direction. So there's probably the structure, potentially, yeah. These are just some things that could be something that has grounded the love of a boot in somebody. It could be the sense of authority that comes with it because of the military construct and the uniforms around that. It could be an experience that one has had under a boot or near a boot. It could be just the heaviness of the material and the inescapable like amount of material. It could be the way that it hides something, but can also, yeah. So it's a lot of potential when it comes to a boot. And also, I guess some people also really love the dirt that cakes on the bottom, and that probably also can come from a little bit more like a training kind of boot aspect, and the things that go around that, whether that's the potential homoeroticism around that, or yeah. So boots deserve a whole thing on its own, I think. So thank you very much for joining me on Q&A 29. I've been doing this for 29 months now, every month. I think I took like a 3-month break somewhere, so, you know, even more months. But this month's theme was on fetishes. I do this on many different things every month, and you're the ones that suggest it. So thank you very much for your questions, and thank you very much for the themes. And I think I'm going to keep doing them until maybe 50. So how much longer do I have? I still got some more years on it. But thank you so much, and I will see you next month. And yeah, think about what theme you want me to talk about, yeah? Goodbye from New York. Bye.